Hello and welcome to another rousing edition of Trending Topics with BB. Well, as you can hear, I am back with a brand new episode of this podcast. I've taken quite some time off for personal reasons, as mentioned in previous episodes, and also just to kind of get my podcasting groove. Everybody and their brother has a podcast these days. When I started this podcast, not many people knew what a podcast was. So, not to say I'm a pioneer, but kind of. But anyway, thank you for listening. I appreciate all of the support and the continued support from all of the listeners out there. And as always, I like to start in my intros with the housekeeping. And that is if you could go to the official website, trendingtopicswithbbpodcast.com. There you get all the new episode, the links to all the episodes throughout the internet, as well as the links to the YouTube channel and any other social media platforms that you want to follow and subscribe to. And if you are listening to this podcast on a podcast platform such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, where they ask and they're able to take ratings and reviews, please, if you haven't done so, please leave a favorable rating or review. It helps the algorithm within these platforms suggest this podcast so other people like yourself can listen to it. On this episode of podcast, I want to introduce ReDub, or as well, he's also known as his name, William Schneider, from Romania. He's a Coldharbour Recordings artist as well as sound engineer. He has many hats, and we had a lovely conversation about his background in music and also the producing and DJing that he does presently. So without further ado, I give you my wonderful conversation with ReDub. Awesome. So welcome to my podcast. You're the first one on after this long hiatus that I've been on, but welcome ReDub, or as other people also know you as William, to the podcast. So I guess let's start with how you started in music, what your love of trance and electronic music, and we'll get into it.
Hey, welcome. I'm very happy and very honored to be in your podcast. Well, it was a long journey. I started 21 years ago, back in 2002, when the early trance was just like started to developing. But we have to go back even in the time to 97, 98, when I first started to listen to electronic dance music. I've used it like cassette tapes. To listen when I was a kid. I was like 7, 8 years old, and I started to listen to some German trance like Kai Tressid, ATB, Cosmic Gate, Paul van Dyk, Cosmonova, and stuff like this. And later I just found the let's say the trance music station, or more like a mainstream music station, or TV station, the Viva and the TMF, which was the Viva was actually is a German TV, which broadcasted more like the German scene. But later on, I just went more and more into electronic dance music, and in 2002. I remember I've already heard about this artist, but in 2002 I've found his album, and I listened to the track which called "You Are Not Alone." And you already know who is this. It's ATB, and I was like, yeah, this is the track which inspired me to start making music. And of course, later I found more and more inspiration, like Markus Schulz, Ferry Corsten, the Duderstadt, and some others like Chicane, Above and Beyond. And yeah, slowly I started to make music. I was 12 years old. I had inspiration to do that. And a couple of years later, I was like 14 or 15 when I started to make the DJing stuff. Because first I didn't want to be a DJ, but I realized that that's the only way how I can promote my music. So yeah, this is the start. This was the beginning. Like, was very hard back in the days because no internet, nothing. I had to learn everything from my own. There was no one in the town who actually can help me, so it was a fun start. But yeah, 21 years and I'm still here. I'm happy that I can do.
So I mean, that's really young, which is great that you started. But so you're from, so where did you grow up? And did you have music influences like from family members or musicians in your family?
Well, I'm from Europe, from Romania, and I have a family which is a part Hungarian, a part German. So it's a kind of interesting. None of my family members was musicians, and yeah, well, the music was like always with me because that was the way how I was expressing my feelings, my word. Um, but yeah, so none of my family members was musicians. I did this like as an inspiration because I loved making music when I was a kid, and later I started to learn piano, like to play, even guitars. But I didn't felt so inspired to do guitar, and I stick with the piano. But yeah, it was a nice journey. Still, even if it's my family, it wasn't for musicians. I got some support from them, which is pretty great, and I'm very happy about it. But yeah, so that's the small story about it.
That's awesome. And, I always kind of ask the question. I mean, I love electronic dance music, but other than like finding inspiration in the artists you mentioned, what about that sound when you first heard it, like in that age, resonated with you? Because like there's so many different genres of music. So why was it ATB's tracks or Marcus Schultz's tracks or anybody that you heard at the time?
First of all, is because it wasn't was the pop music you hear in the radio. It was something new. It was like a brand new experience, like a new word. And I started to look for more of this artist. And when I discovered that this word is such a beautiful, like a colorful word where you have like trance, techno, the synths, and the ambience and everything together, and it makes like a story. I was like blown away. Like, yeah, this is amazing. This is another word. I remember that yeah, of course, I listened to ATB, and I was like, every single track I analyzed, I tried to understand. I loved the composition. The same with Kai Tressid or with Chicane or actually, I not only listened to the electronic dance music because I also listened to some new age from Enigma. I'm not sure if you heard about him. And
Oh, I love Enigma. I grew up on Enigma. Like
yeah, so he
those
inspired.
tracks still resonate with me.
Yeah, so he's also from Romania, by the way. And yeah, I loved his music, and it's such different inspiration, but still, it was amazing to discover all of these genres beside of what you hear in the radio. And especially back in those days, the radio was not really, you know, ready for kind of this music. It was more like the late 90s pop music and the late 80s pop music. It never really got me that. So I was fascinated about the BPM, the synths and the composition, the vocals, and all of these artists. Like, yeah, I heard Mauro Picotto and the productions he had, and I was like, holy shit, it sounds so new to me. Or Kai Tracid with the acid sounds, and it was like, wow, this is something absolutely amazing. Or ATB with this melancholic, more ambient trance, and it was wow. This with the vocals, loved it. And of course, Marcus with his deeper shade of trance, and it was so different. And the same with all these artists who I listened to, like Ferry did some amazing trance back in the days, or Cosmonova, which are a bit more pop trancey, like Euro trance stuff. But I loved it. I loved it because it was a new experience. Of course, for a kid who actually starting to find his way, his place in the world. I think this is an experience where you can find this small stuffs, and you try to grab something here, grab something there, and use it and find yourself in this music. So yeah, that was the way how I did this with the music, how it inspired me, how I found fascinating the electronic dance music.
So I guess I want to get into, well, a little bit. So you just released a track on Coldharbour under the ReDub, your ReDub name, but you also mentioned in the pre-show when we were talking about how you also release tracks under your name as William Schneider. So like talk a bit about like the difference between the names and why the sound and you know because like as we know you mentioned Ferry Corson, he has so many different aliases and a lot of other and Marcus has a Dakota alias for his more techno side. So talk about like deciding to kind of create a new alias and name and sound.
So this was very funny because William Schneider came just because of Coldharbour. Um, so I've used ReDub for like since 2002, and it was more melodic, more progressive, a little bit trance inspired alias. And when I first sent tracks to Marcus to Coldharbour, there was like very like big room techno, big room um, house and trance stuff. And yes, I felt like that is not going to be um, something that I can release as ReDub. And I created William Schneider, and I said, okay, I'm going to separate two sound. One which is for festivals, for the main stage, that's going to be William Schneider, and one which is more melodic, a little bit radio friendly, or a little bit more listener friendly for the people. That's going to be ReDub, and that's the two word. Sometimes I tell to people that it's like the light and the darkness. The light is ReDub, which is of course it's melodic, and the darkness is William Schneider, which is strict for the main stage, something what the DJs can play on festivals.
And since you've been around this for, was it 21 years you said, which is a long time, you have probably experienced difference within how sound is changing or kind of weaving between genres. Do you believe that like the breakdown of each subgenre within house, trance, techno, whatever it may be, is helping people in listening to this music, or do you think it's hurting? Because I feel like I enjoy what I enjoy, but like pinpointing each artist to each subgenre is getting a little out of hand.
Yeah, it's. I think it's frustrating because there are so many subgenres today, like melodic house, melodic techno, then trance, then melodic trance, and trance has like a million subgenres. And when I listen to a music, I don't care the genre. I care about the melody. I care about the composition. And I think that when somebody who's not a musician, who's not a DJ, is gonna start to listen to a track, they don't care about the genre. They don't care like, hey, I'm listening to a big room techno. Hey, I'm listening to a melodic techno. No, they care about the track. If they like, if they love, if they feel something, they can connect to the track. So I think that breaking down to these genres is like, I don't know, it's makes no sense. It's maybe for a DJ and producer it's great, because when you want to search for, I don't know, on Beatport or on any other online platform, you want to search for a specific genre, what you want to play in your sets, it's fine. Or when you go to shop for sample packs and presets, it's fine, because you know that's actually which is going into melodic techno, melodic house, and yeah, that's fine. But for a listener, it's like makes very confusing. We have so many genres these days, and I can tell you, if you ask anyone who is as I said, not a musician. They have no idea what is melodic techno. They listen to it and say, yeah, this is music, this is electronic music. Maybe they say trance. Maybe the new generation, they're going to say to big room techno today what Harwell and Maddox is doing. It's yeah, it sounds similar to the techno and trance back from 2001 and the early 2000s. So yeah, it's complicated for the people. I always call this electronic dance music. And you have to make what you love, and you listen what you love. You're not gonna categorize your music into different subgenres. Like, hey, yeah, I love to listen only to melodic techno, and I don't listen to future rave and to house music. And then you realize, like, wait a minute, melodic techno and melodic house are very similar and does have house elements. So then I don't like house music, I don't like melodic techno and melodic house. No, it's too much. It's complicated for the people.
Well, that's the thing is like to me in my mind, I see melodic techno and trance as basically the same thing because it's heavily both are heavily on the melody side of things. Yeah, there's intricacies that make it seem more techno than trance, but at the same time, being a person that loves just listening to music, I feel like knowing what I know is almost too much being from the musician and knowing this music because you can get in your head and be like, instead of just listening. So I've been trying in the last year, couple years, 3 years, actually since the pandemic to be like following more the artist's name rather than what's listed on the Beatport charts because to me the categorization is just too much. Like you like what you like, and that's why personally I don't believe in people who say, "Oh, I have a guilty pleasure. I like this type." No, you either like it or you don't because it is what it is. To be ashamed of what you're listening to, I mean, art is subjective. So I just think it's funny that people pigeonhole themselves in certain genres and then they wonder why they get bored making the same music over. Like, have you ever found like you've had some sort of writer's block, or are you always finding inspiration?
No, I never had writer's block. Like I actually I never had situations when I like, okay, I have to go outside and walk a bit and watch the stars to get inspiration. No, I sit down and I write music because I have an idea for a music. And no, I never had this kind of situation. But back to the genres, it's interesting. Yeah, I think that the majority of the people will say trance to melodic techno. They have no idea, and they follow the name, they follow the brand. For example, when I'm doing my radio show in motion, I'm always checking the artist first. I know No Rain Pure. I like her tracks. Okay, I'm going to search for No Rain Pure. I don't care the melodic techno chart. Maybe I don't even like any track from melodic techno chart, but I know that what she released, it sounds great. Same for EDX, same for Marcus, same for Aname, same for ATB. So I go specifically for the artist and not for the genre because, and also let's be honest, sometimes this top tens on Beatport or in Spotify are like very weird. I hear some tracks on Beatport listed as melodic techno, which was actually more like a tech house track, and I was like, what the hell is this? Like, come on, if you make a subgenre, at least put the right genre there.
Yeah, that's my frustration. I think we talked a little bit of this in the pre-show, or maybe I mentioned this earlier, but I think the issue too is people don't. Well, there's a whole generation not really learning the fundamentals of what makes a genre. So they hear. I'm all about like getting people on board with house, trance, techno, or whatever music, and they may have come from outside of the genres, and they're not really aware of what the genres are, or where they began or the history of it. So they're just going because their friend said, "Hey, come to this event," or "I like this artist," which is great. Music discovery is great, but I think it's funny now that, like, yeah, as you mentioned, they follow the brand or the big names that they hear at all these festivals, and it tends to, I don't know, it just seems to me like a lot of people, they criticize music these days, specifically in electronic dance music, without actually giving it a chance sometimes, or won't find it because they're not looking at the tech house charts or whatever chart it was labeled. And that's what I that's why I find that, like, music discovery, like, people should check out the new releases every Friday, and try not to always go to, like, the really really popular playlists, because those are curated in a way without, in my opinion, people knowing or looking for, like, smaller artists. Do you agree, or do you think that, like, there's a specific formula?
Well, first of all, the history of dance music for the new generation is something they don't really know about this. So someone who is like 20 years old or maybe 18 years old or maybe younger, I'm sure if you play something from the early 2000s, let's say from Tiesto, let's say from Marcus or from Armin or from Ferry, they have no idea that they did the tracks. Let's say a little bit less known artists like Cosmonova or Kai Tracid, or let's say um, I don't know, maybe Mauro Picotto. They don't know the history about this, and they categorize like, yeah, this is EDM techno. That's all. They have no idea about this. Now, this is kind of sad because they follow the trends, which is sad. The trends was built by you know by big companies, and I mentioned companies like big management and bigger artists who is like have the influence on the listeners, and we know these big names who is gonna have the biggest influence in the market, and what they play they influence the people, and they attract the people, and of course if this big artist starting to play a certain genre, the people going to listen to that. The Spotify and other playlists are like really interesting because big Spotify playlists are all marketing, so this is nothing new. um, there are Spotify playlists which is based on like, hey, do you know this person, that person? This is nothing new. Or if you have so connections, of course, or if you know a different way how to honor them, um, that your track is included there. It's very rare, or you have to be very lucky to include they to kind of include your music in this big playlist. But I've listened to bigger playlists on Spotify. It didn't impress me. But when I listen to smaller playlists and I listen to some artist who is doing, for example, Mayon, his tracks are fantastic. And I listen to his playlists. I love it. And his sets. The same with Marcus and same with Aname, same with all of these artists. They don't have this big millions followers on their Spotify playlist, but the music what they have, it has soul. And the playlist which has a tons of followers, they included only just this pop tracks, which is like, okay, you listen one time, it's great. You listen two times, it's great. Maybe it's good for the radio, and the rest is like, it's like, yeah, you kind of forgot the track.
So, yeah, it's just interesting because, a lot of artists don't make money from the selling of music anymore. It's all about streaming, and the way to support artists these days is to stream, or if you're still an Apple user, buy their tracks or albums. But what's interesting to me is the formula has changed, and a lot of, unless you're like from like the older generation of artists such as a Marcus or a Ferry, or they still believe in albums, but these days music is about tracks, and like the amount that you release. So as somebody that, you're releasing right now, you're working on music, are you thinking more, hey, I need to get the content out? Or are you thinking more, this is my body of work, this is what I'm working on? Do you have some sort of plans? Because ironically, it's been a year today as we're recording this podcast that Daxon released his album, which was great. Um, and so I'm just curious what your thoughts on the whole like landscape of tracks versus albums or both, and how supporting is listening on Spotify or whatever platform you use.
The difference between albums and singles or EPs are huge. Like making an album is a lot of work and a lot of background stuff, working with different artists, and it requires a lot of development from starting making your album, like deciding what tracks you have. You will going to change those tracks like millions of times until it's going to be the final version. Even the mastering is going to be changed and everything is going to be changed. But dealing with the artist, it sometimes it's not easy. Each artist has its own kind of thing that they want to uh, take it in the track, and they don't want to change and stuff like this. It's not easy. Also, from a point of like marketing, you need something like a very good label who is going to do the marketing to you, or you have to have a some kind of a background which you use to pay all of this marketing stuff, because it's not cheap, but a lot of work. So it can be from 1 year to like, I don't know, maybe 2, 3, 5 years for an artist until it finishes an album and it's going to be 100% done, which is a lot. And yeah, from a perspective of album, making an album is great because you have an album in your hands and you did something and it's unique, and you get a lot of tracks what the people can hear. And now you have the questions like, this is going to be right, this is going to be great, maybe if I change something in the last minute. So you always have these questions, which is, yeah, a lot of stress. um, Actually, I also had sometimes idea to get an album done. Twice I started to make an album and I never finished it because I thought like, that's not the time. Maybe one day I'm going to do it. Singles are very easy because you make a track, you release, and your track is there, and you're always on the spot. And the same with the EP, because you have on EP like 4, 3 tracks, 5 tracks, and you're always on spot. With an album, it's really hard because when you work on an album on that 1 year to 3, 5 years period, depends on the work you have to put it in. You have to decide. You still make EPs in that time and release singles or remixes or whatever, just to keep the attention of your followers, which is not easy when you do an album, or you do nothing. And when you release the album, you will have less followers than before, because the people, especially the young generation, is not going to stay with you. They say you're not release anything, so they move on. They're going to find a different artist. So it's a very big risk to work in an album. But yeah, it's a beautiful thing, I think. So personally, I would love to finish an album one day. um but yeah, it's a lot of work. Yeah, it's something what I see the artists who I know, was it's like how much they have to work in order to make the album. And that's why it's easier, especially, yeah, these days you need constant creations and content out. You have to put it out, and you know how it goes in social media. If you don't post something on social media, the people not going to see your post. And the same goes with the music. You need constant releases. The people's attention has to be on the front, because if not, then, well, you have to start all over again. And that's risky. That's risky, especially if you are a small artist. Like if you are someone who is not a big name like Marcus or Ferry or someone like this, it's hard. It's hard. Yeah, especially with the young generation who is gonna listen to your track and they say like, yeah, I like your music and I'm gonna follow you. They see you don't have any new music and they quickly go in to find a billion other artists. So yeah, it's not an easy task, an album. But yeah, I think EPs and singles are momentarily the easiest way to keep the attention, to track people. The only thing I hate about this, like there was a trend which I really hate, extended mixes, which is like 3 minute long. And I was like, Jesus, why you need to do this? Why you can't keep the track at least like 5 to 6 minutes until, because 3 minutes is nothing. Like you don't even realize the track. You don't even have time to feel the track to kind of understand what it's about. But yeah, that's is a different story because it goes to the festivals where the DJs tries to squeeze more and more tracks into one set, and in 1 hour they can include, instead of like 12 tracks or 10 tracks, they can include like 30 or 40 tracks. So yeah.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about that because you've mentioned that you were a producer first and a DJ second.
Yeah.
And, depending on the many different artists that has been on the podcast, everybody has their own journey. But I've noticed that's been an issue over the years of like creating tracks that are easy for DJs to mix in or, basically like take it to, just make it easy for them. So I think it's funny how tracks have gotten shorter and shorter depending on the artist. But it's interesting because, like, what do you believe is the best in terms of like how you go to create a track these days? Because are you going for like the DJ in mind, or are you going from your producer, artist, love of music side?
Well, this is a good question. Honestly, when I produce music, I always go what I feel it's great. If I feel that the track has a potential, I finish. If not, I'm gonna try to work in a different way. But yeah, I produce. You know, when I start to produce a track, it's not. I don't produce specially just because I want to hear on, for example, the ReDub tracks. I don't specifically produce because I want to hear on a festival. I know it's a very different genre. The William Schneider tracks are produced specifically for the festival, so that's why that's a mentality you have to keep. So I think that these days, when you sit down as a DJ, you have to think about, when you sit down as a DJ to produce a track, when you are just a DJ, like to be an easy to mix the track, um, to be something that moves the crowd, the people, and to be something what it's like radio friendly, at least something that the people can understand easily. But a producer who is more like a producer, they want emotion in the tracks. So you can clearly see it as like the people who is more producers than DJs. Take for example Mayon. He's a fantastic producer, as I told you, and his tracks are genial. Like how it's was built up and the sound design and everything. But if you take another artist who is more specifically a DJ, their tracks are more focused on to be short, be very easy to understand because of course that's is radio friendly. And yeah, that's how it goes these days. So you have to kind of decide which part you want as a DJ and as a producer. So yeah, the shorter tracks, yeah, as I said, I'm not a big fan of it. um and I'm very happy that the Coldharbour Recordings let me to be myself and to produce what I love. Of course, they gave me feedbacks about this, but they never forced me like, hey, you have to produce this genre because this sells more, or that genre because that sells more. So yeah, this is something really cool.
Yeah, what I found, I mean, authenticity in music can be found the more people listen to it, in my opinion. The more I listen to music, but I'm also kind of an anomaly because I pretty much listen to music every day. So I'm aware of kind of a sound that maybe an artist might take into account. And specifically, what I've always found with Coldharbour, and I also love Drum Code as labels, is yeah, you can feel there's a sound that that's what those labels are, but each artist brings something unique to each track that's released within the repertoire. So, like for instance, your latest track, "Come with Me," it's great because like as I've been a fan of this label for a long time, it's nice that like as you mentioned that the team there agrees to like listen to the artist making the track as opposed to kind of steer them in some sort of direction that goes with what maybe the label might be recognized from. So that's what's great to hear. Especially, I've talked about it like when I had Ben Gold on the podcast years ago. We talked a little bit about ghost producing and what that brings to the. Some people have made their living being a ghost producer, and I'm to play devil's advocate, like in the middle of like, I understand why somebody would go down that route if they don't really are not the type of person that want their name out there. But at the same time, I would feel like as an artist, you kind of also do want your credit of what you've created. So not to be like really controversial with the subject, but your thoughts on what ghost producing within the industry, does it help artists or hurt artists?
Yeah, this is a this is a good question because ghost producing is something. This is a question about what I hear millions of times. I think it's a job. So if this is something. Let's talk about this at the first, like how this was invented. Like there are people who feels really great in the studio and they don't want to go on stage because they feel insecure, they don't want to play on stage, they don't like to be on stage, they are more like introverted people, they don't you know they feel fine in the studio. So producing tracks from artists who is going to pay them, I see absolutely no problem. It's a job. It's like any other job in the world. Like it's a job. Now, yeah, not everyone is going to be a superstar DJ. Not everyone can make a show because it's a different thing be on stage and be in studio. In stage, you have to make a show. You have to, it's not only the DJing, it's not the same like how it was 20 years ago when you went to the club or to the festival and you played what you feel is great, or some tracks which was just came out and you have the track on vinyl. I still remember those days because I had vinyls and I know like how hard it was to get some tracks. And yeah, it was a nightmare for the perspective, like vinyls are like really hard to move if you have a lot of vinyls and stuff like that. Anyway, so back to the subject. um yeah, the ghost producing is something that it's it's a job. So I don't see anything wrong about it. Now if an artist who is who is a DJ and does not have time to produce music and says like, okay, I have a team of XY person who is producing for me and he gives the credit, that's perfectly fine. If you don't get the credit but you still get paid, it's perfectly fine. It's a job. So yeah, who cares? Like, trust me, this ghost producers in the background, they still they are artists who know each other. So it's not like, okay, I'm a big artist and I have a ghost producer, and my ghost producer is, I'm locking him down and I never let him to know older people or older people about him. It's not how it works. So yeah, it's a job. It's a job, and I respect these people who especially who says like, okay, I do ghost producing. Like, yeah, it's a job. It's a way of making money out of your work and your art. Some people say, yeah, it's bad because you ruined the EDM scene. Like, come on, this is a bullshit. This is something that I don't see relevant. Let's if we have to mention the big names, there are people who is helping them, of course. So yeah, ghost producing, it's not a crime. It's a way of making your using your art, your professional uh, level of making music, and sell it like any other product. So in this way, like, yeah, you are Elon Musk and you sell Tesla, and that's a crime because you have an electric car. No, it's not. You make something, you make a product and you sell it, and the same goes with the ghost production. You have a product and you sell it. That's all.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's certain people that I've met over the years that are on the side of kind of like that it's bad and wrong, and then because they're unaware of kind of the other way of it. I guess the reason I kind of brought it up is in thinking about producing versus DJing and doing both. There are people within the industry that believe that you have to do both to be successful.
That's
And
not true, because back in the days, DJing, it was DJing. None of the DJs is produce music, or maybe a small amount. Like, you can watch, or anyone else can watch the Laidback Luke video about it, and he explains exactly the same. Like 20 years ago, the DJs was DJs. They don't made music. It was producers who made the music. And for example, there are the pop artists. For example, I don't know, Adele or Britney Spears or anyone else. They have ghost producers. Now, we're gonna judge these ghost producers because they make the music for this artist. No, we know that they have ghost producers. Now, what's wrong with having a producer for a DJ? Not everyone is a musician. A DJ has a really good ear on like what's going to work in the club and on a live show, because they play constantly. So they know all of this, and they know how to build a track. This is fantastic. And if he has an artist who is a musician, because yeah, you have someone who produced for you, that person makes the melody to be beautiful, to make it as perfect as possible. The DJ has in the build up, and that's how they make amazing tracks. But today, everyone has expecting a DJ to be a DJ, a producer, a mixing engineer, a mastering engineer, several other things, which is not like everyone. Like, if you are just a DJ, it's fine. Like, you don't have to be a musician, high level composer, someone like Hans Zimmer just to become a DJ. No, if you are a DJ today, and if you say, okay, I want to make music, but I have absolutely no idea how to produce, I don't know the scales, fine. Find someone, make the music with him, and it's done. So I don't see any wrong about this. Or the touring DJs. How many DJs at the time, especially the top DJs, to kind of sit down and to produce? They have the laptop is with them. They have some small time to make an idea for a track. Maybe they finish the track like a sketch. They send to someone who finishes the track, doing the mixing and mastering. But yeah, this stuff, what the some DJ says, like, yeah, I'm gonna produce a track on an airplane and I'm gonna do the mixing and mastering. That's I don't believe in this. So you have to be the most talented mixing and mastering engineer to make a mixing and mastering and to finish a track and to make a radio hit on a laptop on a plane while you're going on a show. Yeah, so yeah, I don't see any wrong things about ghost producing. Maybe the people is going to hate me about this, but it's a job. So yeah.
No, I'm not trying to like stir up the pot or anything, but I feel like it's good to like to get different people's perspectives, especially people that are within the industry, because I've mentioned this on probably way too many of the previous episodes, but what always comes to mind is I kind of felt, if you've watched the documentary about Avicii and how he was a producer first and then they made him DJ and they made him DJ too much, which inevitably was abuse in my opinion, and basically that's why he died. It's just sad that like the industry, there's certain gatekeepers in the industry that are like, you have to do both, or you have to be a basically a cash cow for me as your manager or whoever. I just feel that that type of mentality and behavior within the industry is probably still holding the industry back. And there are probably so many talented people out there that aren't getting the opportunities because maybe they prefer to DJ or maybe they prefer to produce. Specifically in electronic dance music, it is a heavily, there are not that many women or people that identify as women. And I love to see some artists like Charlotte DeWitt, and there are some really great trailblazers out there, but it's still so different. And I've heard from many artists in private conversations of, oh, well, I'm told because I don't produce, I shouldn't DJ or vice versa. And I think it's, in my opinion, hindering the art and maybe the opinions that people might have on electronic dance music as a whole, because there are certain people still within the industry telling people to do both or do one or the other, or not book somebody as maybe a support act because they don't believe, they deserve it. So as somebody as yourself that was a producer first, DJ second, but you've done both, what are your thoughts on how people are booked? Specifically, I'm not talking like the big festivals, but I'm like even like at clubs or local events.
So bookings in a local events is always going on like the connections. This is nothing new. Like if you know someone who knows someone, yeah, it goes in the same way. Or you have to be someone who actually has some noticeable stuff like tracks released on big labels, or some interviews and high level media part. Yeah, in that case you get invitation from events, from local events and stuff like that. But I think that social media has affected a lot over the years, because I remember the times when if you had likes and comments on your social media, you get an invitation to XYZ event and clubs, which was kind of sad because yeah, it started to develop the industries of like fake likes and fake followers and stuff like that. But anyways, it's that's actually what's really was a something what was never, it's not good for the industry. I think that the music these days, it's not really important when you do a booking. It's a small percentage, the music, which is sad. The bigger percentage is like your social media appearance, like the media appearance, um, the connections you have, of course, that's also super important. But music is not that too important anymore. Um, and back to the females in the industry, I truly respect when I met with someone who is in the music and it's doing it. Does, I don't care if it's just a producer or a DJ or a mastering engineer or a vocalist. I truly respect that person because it's a really hard industry. Um, and it's oversaturated with guys. And yeah, I hear bad stories which happened with females in this industry, but I truly respect the women's. I had an opportunity to actually mix back to back with female DJs, and it was so amazing, so fun. I had an opportunity to sit down and talk with them, and it was a mind blowing experience because they have totally different than a guy. It's harder for them in some way because they are not as much accepted like the guys in this industry. But it was fascinating, and I always love to sit down with the people and talk. And when I hear about the stories what a female DJ, producer, vocalist, whatever it's telling me, it's just amazing because yeah, it's truly something respectful, and you have to respect these people because they still doing something which is really really hard. And yeah, finally back to the subject of the bookings. I think bookings for the females, it's another story because it goes more for yeah for your social media, for the connections, like, and yeah, sad or not sad in some ways. Also, the promoters are looking you like how easily they can sell you on stage and they can make money out of you because the people are going to see you. I still remember something what I learned from artists, like you have to make music which sells the tickets, which is true. But yeah, it's important the social media, as I told you, it's important the social media, it's important Spotify to have Spotify followers, the social media, the TikTok, and all of this stuff. It has to be like perfect in order to get invitations from event or from a club, or of course connections, so someone to know someone and so on.
Yeah, I've had Nifra on the podcast, Christina Sky, um, many different other artists, and the reason I do this podcast for those that are first time listeners, and to kind of reiterate to yourself, is people need to be heard, and whether it's music or whatever their expertise is. And I just think it's interesting to me that while technology is moving at a crazy speed, as it always has, as other industries are moving really quickly, that there's certain things and traditions within all of music, not just specifically to electronic dance music, that is holding back really the art, in my opinion. And the more I've talked to artists like yourself and other people, the more I believe that like it's great to hear that like you feel the same way of like the industry kind of needs more artists and kind of people's perspectives, as you've mentioned that they women look at things differently than men and so on and so forth. So that's kind of why I bring it up, because like I've kind of talked about it over the years on the podcast, but I still believe that like there's still work to be done.
For example, Nifra has she hasn't so much energy when she is on stage, and she's such a down to earth person. When I met her at Untold, I was like, yeah, you can talk with her, she's very friendly, she's very nice. And all the older female DJs, of course there are artists who is like divas, but men also can be that kind of person who is like a diva and like, I don't care anyone else because I'm a superstar. That's not a good mentality, I think, at all. If you have fans, you have to be loyal to them, and you have to be someone who can go out and talk with them. Um, yeah, that's one of the reasons I respect Marcus, because no matter what, uh, no matter how he's tired, he's always goes out with the fans and talks and take pictures and stuff like this. But yeah, back to the subject. I really think that selling the artist because, for example, it looks good, that's not great. Selling the artist because it's a really great showman, yeah, it can be great, but it also depends how great show it does that artist. And we need more musicians, we need more people who actually does music. But yeah, not everyone who is a musician wants to be on stage. Just because, let's say, if your management says like, okay, you have to be a someone who makes a show and you have to do stupid things on stage, there are people on the industry who does that, throwing cakes and stuff like that. Yeah, it's fun, but in the other hand, maybe they are doing great music, maybe they actually making music, but it's something what, I don't know, not every artist is going to do that. um so yeah, I think that when I go out on an event, I'm going for to see the artist, to see the art. And when I see flying cakes and stuff like that, maybe it's fun for like 1 minute or two. But no, I don't know. I respect the people who is doing this because they love the music and not because they want to be on stage and to do stupid things.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I respect artists for the art. Um, so yeah, I feel the same way. But it's great to hear. But before I don't want to take up too much of your time, but uh, we've mentioned your latest track. You just released a new video for that, correct? It's on
Yeah,
YouTube.
yeah, yeah. Yes.
So everybody who's listening to this podcast, hopefully I'll link in the description links to go and check it out. But thank you so much for being my guest on this podcast, and I'm looking forward to your new music that you're going to be cranking out.
Yeah, I have to thank you for this amazing conversation. It's always nice to sit down with someone to talk about music, and it was a great experience. And I have to thank you so much.
Well, thank you, and looking forward to it in the future.
Yeah, for sure. I can't wait.